Hello, and welcome to this edition of DrBryantSpeaks.com. Our show, of course, is for all those military veterans and families out there. And, of course, anyone that is willing to listen in this world. My name is Dr. Bryant, also a veteran, master life coach, entrepreneur, and your host this evening. Now, if you are new to listening to this broadcast, I want to say welcome and thank you for tuning in. I started this because being a veteran for many is no easy transition into being a civilian. However, it is not easy for family members either. So we need to collaborate and learn how we can support one another. This show is about 30 minutes in length, including questions and answers from calls, emails, and text messaging. So no worries, I won't keep you too long. Now, every show, we will discuss new and various topics that impact families and military veterans. Many of the topics come from the listeners, and some are hot topics that are impacting each other and many of us. So on that note, today's show topic is about Veterans Treatment Court. Now, you probably have not heard about this, and I know I didn't not until very recently. So if you haven't heard, it's probably because your county of where you reside has not adopted it yet. So what is a Veterans Court? Well, the Veterans Treatment Court offers opportunity for the Veteran Affairs and the local supportive organizations and local communities to engage veterans and offer treatment as an alternative to time in jail. That's right, time in jail. So men and women who have served in our country are given a second chance. Some might say they're even entitled to a second chance. Now, you might agree or not agree, and I understand that. We all have our right to our opinion. But I think considering when you are coming back from serving your country, and sometimes you don't quite understand why you do the things that you do, somebody needs to have a second look and help you understand why you made the decision that you did. So now, according to military.com, that's a website that I know I frequent a lot, they could say that most veterans are, quote unquote, strengthened. Now, what does that mean? You may have an opinion or a definition that might be different from mine, but I'd like to think that they're talking about a veteran being disciplined, or they may have a certain level of performance. They may have an heightened level of tolerance. So figure out what you think and you get back to me. Because I do know one thing, they are strengthened by their military service. But the combat experience has unfortunately left a growing number of veterans with post-traumatic stress disorder. That's PTSD. Some of them even have TBI, which is traumatic brain injury, anxiety, depression, and a multitude of other mental health concerns that may exist. Now, recognizing this problem, many local states and communities have developed special veteran treatment courts that seek to provide veterans suffering from these issues. And this assistance will keep them from slipping into the real legal problems. All right, so why the special court for veterans? Well, there's a lot of documented evidence that are out there. A significant number of these veterans have returned. So let's talk about the Vietnam conflict, okay? So those Vietnam vets have returned. They have rather severe problems adjusting to civilian life. Now, me personally, I'm a motorcycle enthusiast. So I'm also aware of the HA Club, which is the Hells Angels. Now, many people are aware that those individuals who chose to take that path chose that path because they felt that it was their only choice. They wanted to be among their brethren, and they wanted to find the means to actually financially support themselves. And that evolved into what we know of now as the Hells Angels, but their actions may not have always been something that they were consciously aware of. They were doing what they felt they were doing and was continuing on that path. Now, we know today, present day HAs are not necessarily doing the same things, but things happen and start for a reason. Now, many veterans remain untreated for a long period of time. The Veteran Affairs and local courts have recognized that many of these veterans today are also returning home with mental health issues, and some of those are left untreated, and that can actually result into larger problems. My dad's a history buff. He actually got a degree from UCLA in history, and he likes to educate and continue to educate himself on what's going on. I remember him once telling me about the Reagan's presidency and how Reagan had actually closed down many of the mental hospitals during his tenure. Now, because of that, that led to a number of homelessness that actually has plagued our cities all over the country. I even talk about in my recent book that before we were aware of the term PTSD, we called it shell shock. But there wasn't a lot of support behind it when we referred to the World War II vets, the Vietnam vets, the Korea vets. These individuals are going through something and nobody was really able to understand how to help. So in early signs that a veteran having unaddressed problems, maybe when they first break the law. Now, most courts work with veterans of all service areas. Let's be honest. Communities are often motivated, I should say, to start these courts by concerns about veterans returning from service who are encountering legal trouble. You know, a good example is you come back, you're in a very aggressive state, you have certain levels of anger, and you take it out on your spouse. Did you mean to do that? You may even take it out on your daughter or your son. Did you actually consciously, were you aware of what you were doing? Sometimes your actions will basically come from a reaction, which is stimulates from something that somebody may say or do that will trigger something in you. And this is exactly what we're talking about because you may be held accountable for that. And therefore, your consequences are the reality based on statute and law. So the goals of Veteran Treatment Court is to divert those mental health issues, and that includes the homelessness, from the traditional justice system and give them treatment and tools for rehabilitation and readjustment. So Veteran Treatment Courts, they were developed to avoid the unnecessary incarceration of our veterans. Now, these veterans have developed mental health problems. These individuals are facing criminal charges who are in fact in need of mental health or substance use treatment. But how do we get that? And it is assumed that the Veteran Treatment Court will be the process that would allow the assistance necessary. The assistance necessary is the growing number of communities where these courts need to exist. Now, I could talk about another topic that actually has some relation. Now, I grew up in Compton, and in Compton, you're basically a kid who's growing up in an area of violence. And that area of violence is having a kid witnessing shootings and violence weekly on the streets. And now we're worried about being the victim of a stray bullet. Now, is that child or person suffering from PTSD as they go every day worried about being shot? If that kid commits a crime, does he or she fall under the same considerations? You know, the state of California changed their prison system and named it from the California Department of Corrections to what we know now as the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation because of this awareness. However, it is still a prison. Now, I mentioned that young kid going through every day worrying about a stray bullet or being jumped by a gang or just basically on survival mode as he or she tries to get to school or get home from work. Well, it's not that far-fetched when you're actually in Iraq or Baghdad or Afghanistan and you're on the swivel looking on your left and right flank at each moment wondering where or who may be there around the corner. And we recognize that veteran having PTSD. So I wonder if there's something there that connects our young individuals who are growing up in the inner cities, in the ghetto, in areas that have high crime rate. But that's a whole nother podcast for us to discuss. Now, veteran treatment courts are a hybrid drug and mental health court that serves veterans struggling with addiction, and that includes serious mental illness and the reoccurring disorders. They promote sobriety, recovery, and stability through a coordinated response that involves the cooperation and the collaboration, for that matter, with traditional partners that were found in our drug and mental health courts. Now, the Veteran Affairs, volunteers, veteran mentors, and that includes our family support organizations are all there to provide assistance. Now, the question is, what type of assistance and for who? Usually veteran courts hear cases involving misdemeanor charges. Now, according to military.com, they say that does not include sexual offenses or violent crimes. My research has shown that it depends on the county. I know, for instance, in my county, they do look into felony crimes as a consideration. Now, I'm sure your local DA's office may try to push against that, but that's not up to him or her. It's up to the judge, whoever is facilitating the Veterans Court. And if you have just cause to demonstrate your illness and there appears to be some level of help to assist, you may have a chance. Now, while Veteran Treatment Court allows the veteran to remain in the community while undergoing treatment, a judge will check on your progress. So if the veteran fails to meet the requirements of the program, for example, if he or she fails a drug screening or disobey court orders, well, the court obviously will impose sanctions, which may include additional fines or jail time, or simply transfer you out of the program and you go right back into the traditional criminal court. Now, research shows that treatment court judges are motivators and will provide ongoing encouragement to participants as they undertake the difficult work of recovery. The Veteran Treatment Court model requires regular court appearances, as well as mandatory attendance at treatment sessions, and frequent and random testing as well. If you are somebody that's under the influence of drugs, or you're somebody under the influence of alcohol, if that has some participation in your crime, or it might just be a dependency that you're struggling with, those things are available to you. They say that veterans respond favorably to this structured environment, and that's because of their past experiences in the armed forces. Think about it. You're used to that structure. You're used to being told what to do. You're used to following guidance. You're used to following directions. So you would imagine that most would be successful. However, there are a few who struggle, and it is exactly those veterans who need the Veteran Treatment Court. They're probably the ones that are going to be identified as needing it the most. It would be very unfortunate if those are the ones who, unfortunately, are the ones that are released because they violate something. So hopefully that's something they can look into, and you have a sympathetic judge who will be willing to work something out. Without structure, a lot of veterans will reoffend and will remain in the criminal justice system. And this is a very unfortunate thing. The Veterans Treatment Court is able to ensure that they will try to help and meet all obligations. You have the court, you have the community, you have your mentors. They're all there to help, to enable participants and their likelihood of successful rehab. We try to do this early. You want to do this continuous. And that intense judicial and supervised treatment is necessary. Now, veteran treatment courts, they also serve as one-stop shop, you can say. Now, what does that mean? Well, think about it. You link the veterans with the service benefits, and you have the program for providers, you have Veteran Affairs, you have the veteran service organizations, you have the volunteer veteran mentors. You have everybody there who's addressing the issues and is there to assist. So Unfortunately, your path to that point is going to go through a judicial process. But once that happens, everybody who is willing to support and help will be available. Now, I was able to find some information pertaining to my local county, and I want to share a few things that I think is pretty important. Now, I want to remind you, this is just the county that I live in that happens to have a veterans court, but each county may be slightly different, and they may have different bylaws or a handbook that may be slightly off with other things in mind. But I would understand that most may have a corresponding literature that has the same level of goals, achievements, and the same purpose behind the words that are written. And if that's the case, I don't see how this could go wrong. So, program rules in my particular county talks about attending all treatment sessions. They also talk about reporting to your probation officer as directed. So remember, you actually committed a crime. So doesn't mean that you're just going to release you on the street and you're on your own. There are somebody who has to keep accountability of you. There's the drug and alcohol testing, which is going to be required. So you're obviously going to have to maintain a lifestyle of free drugs and alcohol. That includes no possessions as well. Unfortunately, that also probably includes no possession of alcohol, which I know as a veteran, that could be a pretty challenging thing. I personally have a show that talks about wine, and I love my wine, so I would hate to have that taken away. They have some common sense things such as being on time for all your court appearances. Obviously, you need to attend your counseling sessions and attend anything that relates to self-help. These are all required, but they have a timeline in my particular county that I find very interesting. So when you go through the process and accept this nature of a veterans court, they're saying is that you're going to go through this and it's going to take you 18 months throughout your probationary period. So let me break down a little bit about the treatment phases that apparently tallies up to 18 months. There's a window period. That's the first 30 days. Apparently, that's when they're actually doing all the evaluation and making sure you understand all the probationary rules. And if the rules are violated, you are subject to sanctions. On phase 1, you have the initial stabilization. They said that takes approximately 1 month. That's when you're participating with all the assessments. You're participating in all forms of treatment. And it also includes all your testing related to drug and alcohol, weekly contact with probation officers, meeting with your defense attorney, and attending your court appearances. And it also talks about mentor coordination as well as any other such VSO support group that could be available to you. Phase 2, establishing treatment and recovery plan. That takes about 3 months. That's when you're participating in the treatment plan. You're participating in the mental health treatment. You're frequently doing your testing. You're frequently meeting with your probation officer, meeting with your mentor, and it gives you time to find a sponsor. So then they also ask, and this is what I like personally, is identifying some personal goals. Phase 3, ongoing treatment. This takes approximately 6 months. Now, this is when you're kind of putting the wheels to the ground. You're still doing everything we just mentioned, which is basically participating in all of your various treatments. You're still doing all your testing. But now they've upped the ante a little bit because now they want to make sure that you're obtaining employment, doing volunteer work, and you're obtaining stable housing, specifically to those who were recently or in the past homeless. Phase 4. This is the stabilization and reconnecting with the community. This takes approximately 4 months. Again, we check all the boxes about your drug test, meeting with probation officer, doing all your mental health, but now they've added some additional things that might be a little more challenging, and that's making sure that you are working. So there's a point of when you have to be working, no longer looking for that. So you have plenty of time, and other activities may be required of you. Phase 5 is going to be another 4 months, and that's when you're establishing aftercare and graduation. I love this because when you're doing all your drug tests, you're finalizing your reports to your probation officer, you're attending recovery, you're attending your court hearings. Now they're talking about, guess what? Let's complete your community project and let's complete your aftercare plan. And that's to ensure that you have a prevention of any relapse. This is really important. So you work with your probation and your veteran mentor and possibly your lawyer. And then after that, you graduate. And this is good. This is where they recognize your achievement. You've come to a close of your 18 months. You completed all phases. You completed all terms and conditions. You've achieved stable living arrangements. And my understanding at that point is when you're probably released from whatever crime you have committed, charges are dismissed, and you're moving on with your life. Now, the incentives are obviously there in so many different forms. There's sobriety, being able to graduate. You actually now performing as a person of the community. These things are all important. And I think that that's what we need to understand and take away. But I'm not at any point in time saying this is going to be easy. And easy is truly a challenge when you're trying to consider what you're having to do realistically. So I want to say that this is definitely something I find that's very important to all vets. And if you should ever find yourself in trouble, please take those under consideration. Meanwhile, if you are a vet who has some level of stability, but you're still out there looking, I want to talk about an organization. And I'll do this on each of my shows where I actually recognize an organization that's doing well for our community of vets. And this time we're going to talk about an organization and a program called SAVVY. SAVVY is the Strategic Alliance for Veteran Integration. Yes, I read that right. SAVVY. So savvyvets.org, the Strategic Alliance for Veteran Integrations. So basically their mission is to ensure that we can get the VA benefits and provide custom transition solutions to veterans and the organizations that support them. Some of those programs that they support and assist with is education, transitioning into higher education after years in the service. So understanding that it may seem overwhelming, they want to work with you by designing specific to you as a person and try to help you from start to finish. What about employment? Continuing on your professional journey after military service can be an amazing opportunity. So they assist with that. I actually have a show we're going to talk about employment, contracting, entrepreneurship, which segue into another program they assist with, chasing your dream of being independent. And then finally, they also have a program related to retirement. So they understand after serving your time in the military, it's time to look forward towards your military retirement. So SAVVY provides these programs to help you track your financial, your emotional, physical, and mental progress after you separate. Again, their website is savvyvets.org, but they're also on YouTube at Savvy Vets, and they have a Facebook page as well. So feel free to stop by and look at that. And if any other questions, always reach out to me, but they're always available to assist those in need. Now, at this point, I like to end the show with a couple of questions that might be available and discuss what's going to be coming on our next show, which is going to talk about employment challenges. So if you have any questions, please hit my website. Feel free to drop in. Go to my, Twitter page. You can go to my Instagram page. You can go to my Facebook page. And you can always ask me questions that you might have burning in your head. Because again, I am your host, Dr. Bryant, and you are listening to DrBryantSpeaks.com. And please continue to listen to my podcast. Some of my upcoming topics are going to be related to Social Security disability, military disability, GI Bill, employment challenges, working in technology, PTSD, anxiety, depression, VA versus community care. And one of the topics I just recently added is, let's talk about this taking a knee. What exactly does that mean and how it's impacting our community? And I have a series of guests that will be joining. So if there are no other topics at this time, I want you to be blessed and know that I am speaking to you. But more importantly, someone is always listening, and that someone is not just me. This is Dr. Aaron Bryant. I want to say thank you for listening. Hopefully that you will find yourself in a good nature and having a wonderful day. Thank you for listening.